Hello. The weather is getting warmer and Memorial Day will be coming up in another month and then 4th of July. So this is a good season to be thinking about barbecuing. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make your own homemade barbecue sauce. Of course, there are a lot of great barbecue sauces available in the stores, even some that are available from local places, but sometimes it can be nice to make your own if you like to be creative and enjoy doing these things. The other nice thing about making your own sauce is that you can control different aspects of the ingredients. If you don't like a super spicy sauce, but you want a little bit of kick to it, you can adjust the heat level. You can also adjust things like the amount of salt and the amount of sugars. So making your own barbecue sauce is good for a number of different reasons. And you can just play around with it and get creative if you'd like and try different things each time. If you're going to make the sauce along with the video today, these are the things that you will need. It's a fairly basic recipe. I will offer some potential varieties that you can do with different ingredients that aren't on this list, but the basic sauce that I'm going to make in this video only requires these ingredients, and you wouldn't even need the cutting board and knife if you're going to use onion powder and garlic powder instead of fresh onion and garlic. And if you're going to skip the chilies as well, or if you just have some chili powder like cayenne that you might want to add instead. Then you would really just need the saucepan, the measuring spoons, and a spoon for stirring. So you can go ahead and pause the video and gather any of these ingredients. And I will go to the next slide, which shows the actual amounts if you would like. And I'm going to go ahead and get started then. So you can pause the video as you collect what you need. If you're going to substitute garlic powder and onion powder for either the fresh garlic or the fresh onion, then you'll want about a teaspoon of each for this recipe. You could also skip the fresh chilies, and if you wanted to, you can add a little bit of cayenne or other chili powder to your barbecue sauce. Just start sparingly if you don't like a lot of heat. Probably a dash of cayenne is a good place to start, and then you could taste it and see if you'd like more. Another option is if you have dried chilies, you can boil some water. Just bring a small amount of water to the boil, enough to immerse a chili, or more than one if you're going to use more than one, and then remove the water from the heat and put the chilies in, and just make sure that they're immersed in the water and leave them like that for about 20 to 30 minutes. And then you can take them out and you can treat them like a fresh chili and stem, seed, and dice them like you would if it was fresh. Once you have the onion and garlic chopped, and potentially the chilies as well if you're using fresh or rejuvenated dried chilies, you'll want to go ahead and heat up the olive oil or other oil in your pan. And then once the oil is heated to medium, you'll want to saute the onion for about 5 to 7 minutes. Mine is sauteing now. Saute it until it's nice and tender. If you'd like to caramelize it a little bit, you can. It depends on your preference. And then you can go ahead and add the other ingredients. If you are adding any other spices, like if you've decided to add chipotle chili powder, for example, or a smoked paprika for a smoky flavor, dry spices like that, not black pepper necessarily, but other spices like a chili powder, then you might want to add those along with the tomatoes and hold off on maybe adding the sweetener and the vinegar. But the recipe says that you can just add everything together as well. Sometimes the flavors can be enhanced from the dried spices if they are cooked directly in with the oil and the tomatoes first. Here's the onion after I've sauteed it on medium for about 5 minutes. It's nice and tender now, but it hasn't really gotten charred. I've added my garlic and chilies now. Before I add the other ingredients, I'm just going to let them cook for about a minute along with the onion. That's not necessary, but I like to do that to help especially the garlic get a little bit tender and release some of the flavor into the oil, and the chili can end up releasing flavor into the oil as well. I've added all of my ingredients now, so I'm going to let everything simmer for about 10 minutes. I used apple cider vinegar and I used molasses. Molasses has a nice, rich aroma to it that complements a barbecue sauce well, anything savory or spicy. But you could also use maple syrup, which is a little bit sweeter. Agave is also a bit sweeter. Honey, it really depends on the variety that you're using. Some are sweeter than others. Any of those will work, or you could substitute a brown sugar. I don't recommend substituting an artificial sweetener because those won't necessarily produce the flavor combinations, because the chemicals in artificial sweeteners do not react with the other ingredients, like the tomatoes and the spices, in the same way that natural sugars do. You're actually even better off finding a recipe that calls for fruit, for example. I saw a recipe that I'd like to try at some point when cherries are in season that calls for cherries as a sweetener. So you're better off with something like that if you're trying to reduce the sugars, or just keep your sugar at a minimum and don't make it as sweet. Barbecue sauce is somewhat sweet and it does need a little bit of sugar of some kind, but it doesn't need a ton. And that's what I like about this recipe, is it doesn't start out very sweet. You can always increase these ingredients if you want more of something. If you like a very sweet barbecue sauce, you can increase your sweetener. If you like a very spicy one, you can increase your chilies and your black pepper. You can also add more garlic if you really love garlic, more onion. Be careful about things like vinegar. You only need a certain amount. And also with the Worcestershire sauce or the soy sauce or liquid aminos, you probably don't need much more than what the recipe calls for, but the others you can experiment. You can also use chipotle chilies if you'd like a smoky mesquite type of barbecue sauce. You could use some smoked paprika if you want that smoky flavor, but don't want to make it very hot. Or you could use some liquid smoke. That would also add the smoky flavor, but not make it hot. Today, I'm just doing the recipe as it is, and I've added a habanero. So I've kept my black pepper to 1/8 of a teaspoon because the habanero will give it a lot of heat to start. But you can play around and try different things and see what works for you. I'll show you the barbecue sauce when it is done simmering. I should also mention that I added a tablespoon or so of tomato paste this time because I had a little bit of tomato paste from a can that I needed to use up, and I don't have any other things planned in the next 5 to 7 days when it should be used up. So I've gone ahead and added that to this barbecue sauce. So mine will look probably just a little bit thicker than yours will, but not that much thicker. You could add tomato paste as well if you have some you'd like to use, or you'd just like to make a slightly thicker barbecue sauce, which can be nice if you're trying to put it on different kinds of foods like ribs and chicken and things like that to grill them, because a thicker sauce would hold on the meat a bit better. But if you want something that's just for more general purposes, this is a great sauce for that kind of use. So this is my sauce after it simmered for 10 minutes. It's fairly thick, not the thickest barbecue sauce you've probably ever had, but the tomato paste did thicken it up a bit. And I'm not going to bother pureeing mine. The only chunks I have here are from the garlic and the onion, because I used a can of plain tomato sauce that was really just pureed tomatoes, some salt, I think some citric acid, and a little bit of red pepper, but there's nothing else in it. It's not a ready to serve sauce for pastas that has onion and different things in it, chunks of peppers and all of those things, or chunks of tomatoes even. So I'm just going to leave mine a little bit chunky, but if you'd like yours to be perfectly smooth, you could run it through a food processor or blender on puree until it's a perfectly smooth sauce. So I'm going to just let this cool. and transfer it to a container where I will store it in the refrigerator. I did taste my sauce. For my taste, it doesn't need anything more. You can, of course, add more of any of the seasonings that you would prefer. You can add some salt if you'd like, but the tomato sauce that I used already had some salt in it, and the liquid aminos I used also has some salt. So the sauce is perfectly salty without any additional salt. I'm just going to let it go at that. And I think that for me, the balance is perfect. It's just a little bit sweet. It's got a nice kick to it from the habanero and the black pepper. And it's got that tangy flavor from both the tomatoes and tomato paste and from the vinegar. So it's ready to go, and I will use it on things like burgers. I might use it as a dipping sauce for things like fries, or even you can put it on veggies and different things. Do what you'd like with it. I hope that the recipe works well for you. Don't hesitate to check other places like the web and different cookbooks that you can get from the library, both digital and in print, that have different kinds of recipes as well, both for sauces and for things you can do with the sauces. So enjoy and happy start of grilling season.